Welcome to the webinar on digital ethnography, researching things. We have started this course in the month of June, in the first week of June, and it will be continued up to end of the September. We have already designed the course outline, and we are following one by one. And first of all, we are following the textbook prescribed for the our present course on the digital ethnography. That is digital ethnography principles and practice by Sara Pink and her colleagues. So yeah, that book, from that book, I will be sharing the presentation. The total content will be based on the book. So I will be reading the important points so that the concept of things, they have proposed 7 concepts to undertake digital ethnography. So let me share my screen. Yeah, digital ethnography, researching things. In the previous sessions, we have covered 5 principles of digital ethnography mentioned in the book by Sara Pink and Heather Horst and John Postil and Larissa Hichort, Tanya Levis and Joe Tachi. These are the authors of this book, Digital Ethnography and Principles and Practice. In this book, they have prescribed 5 key principles for doing digital ethnography. The first principle is multiplicity. Second principle is non-digital centricness. And the third principle is openness. The fourth principle is reflexivity. And fifth principle is unorthodoxy. So this, in one session, we have finished all these principles. And after that, we are looking at the conceptual framework. 7 key concepts they have proposed to undertake the digital ethnography more productively and meaningfully. So to engage in that digital ethnography, so we are one after one, we are in each session, one concept we are trying to cover. So the 7 concepts proposed by these authors in a social and cultural theory can be used for the design and analysis of ethnographic research. These concepts were selected to represent a range of different routes to undertake this ethnography. So the framework for digital ethnography outlines an approach to doing ethnography in a contemporary world. It invites researchers to consider how we live and research in a digital, material, and sensory environment. This is not a static world or environment. Rather, it is one in which we need to know how to research in it as it develops and changes. Digital ethnography also explores the consequences of the presence of digital media in shaping the technologies and processes through which we practice ethnography, and accounts for how the digital and methodological, practical, and theoretical dimensions of ethnographic research are increasingly intertwined. So the whole content I will be reading from the book prescribed for our course. So as the digital becomes increasingly intertwined with the everyday life, ethnography's value as a key methodological and analytical approach to understand the ways in which digital media technologies are changing how we live, work, and play has increased. So in these 7 concepts, the present uh, webinar session will focus on things, um, uh, engaging in researching things, the things, the objects that are part of our lives, researching things, the concept of things. So under this, we will be the introduction, what is the concept of things, and we will be trying to understand what is the concept of things and where does it come from, how has the current concept of things been developed in existing research, and what are the implications of digital for things, and researching things through digital ethnography, and finally reflecting on things as a category for digital ethnographic research. At the end, the summary and conclusion. So, yeah, in this session, we try to understand how ethnographers have approached the study of media and media technologies as things. We begin by discussing how anthropologists, media, and cultural studies scholars study things that are produced, distributed, circulated, um, consumed, or discarded, and what the study of media and technologies as things enables us to understand about media and technologies as well as social processes and relationships. So, yeah, so we begin by discussing the how anthropologists, media, and cultural studies scholars study things that are produced, distributed, circulated, consumed, or discarded, and what the study of media and technologies as things enables us to understand about media and technologies as well as social processes and relationships. While in many cases, the existing literature references people's relationships to objects. In this chapter, the authors will use the term things, quote unquote, to avoid confusion or conflation with a separate category of analysis, that of media objects. Others argue that while the past 20 years of research has been dominated by a concern with the multiple meanings of consumption, the heart of the contemporary ethnographic research has returned to a focus upon the conditions and processes of production, such as the less visible aspects of digital media infrastructures, such as the less visible aspects of digital media infrastructures and engagement with design practitioners who take consumer desires and aspirations into account in their wish to design usable platforms, software, spaces, and objects. So authors of the book, Digital Ethnography Principles and Practice, illustrate these new directions through 3 examples, which they have undertaken the research studies. So number 1, a study of radio and sound in domestic settings. Second example is a project on energy and portability and the materiality of domestic technologies. The third one is a study of migrants and the use of mobile technologies across national borders. Throughout the chapter, we use the phrase media technologies to and draw attention. The authors use the media technologies to draw attention to the multivalent nature of and the function of things, despite the convergence of their capabilities and uses. What is the concept of things? Where does it come from? Attention to media technologies as things, quote unquote. So, or forms of material culture. has a long history in the social sciences and humanities. Early on, Karl Marx's attention to labor and production processes hinged on the model of technological determinism, wherein the meaning of a particular thing or artifact was predetermined by the production processes. Tucker, 1978. Subsequent work by the Frankfurt School of Scholars looked more specifically at the role of culture industries in the production of mass culture and the ways in which aesthetic forms in art, music, and other forms of mass-produced cultures were resulting in false consciousness conducive to capitalism. Adorno, Benjamin, a later focus on things then developed in and was shaped by academic disciplines and interdisciplinary fields as they came increasingly to account for the material and its implications, including in media and culture studies, anthropology, museum studies, and material culture studies. A significant transformation in approaches to understanding things and material culture occurred with the development of British cultural studies in the 1960s and the broader attention to in the social sciences and humanities to the intersection between capitalism, imperialism, and colonialism. Prominent others, Ortner, Williams, retaining the concern with the power and domination that characterized cultural studies scholarship at the time. Scholars started to focus upon understanding the practices of the non-elites and the meanings that people ascribe to media, material and consumer culture, with increasing attention to how class, race, gender, and other forms of identity were co-constituted. The Center for Contemporary Culture Studies. And these included attention to the production of youth subcultures and ethnic and racial identity through music, fashion, and other forms of consumption. Framing the social or cultural as the locus of agency. They suggested that it was a society rather than production processes that gave things meaning. Framing the social or cultural as the focus of agency, they suggested that it was society rather than production processes that gave things meaning, and that things could be seen as artifacts that reflected relations of power, domination, and inequality in society. A key example of the cultural studies approach to media technologies was outlined in Paul Duguay, Stuart Hall, Linda James, Howe Mackey, and Keith Negus. Doing cultural studies, the story of the Sony Walkman in the groundbreaking study, the authors introduced the concept of circuits of culture as a framework that enabled cultural studies scholars to identify and explore the movements, production, consumption, representation, identity, and regulation, wherein culture defines and shapes the meaning of media technologies. Alongside cultural studies, the field of material culture studies also experienced a renaissance of sorts in the 1980s, moving away from the focus upon museums, collecting, and archaeology, characteristic of its early origins in anthropology, to contemporary forms of material culture and mass consumption. Miller. Rather than viewing things as reflections or products of society. Material culture studies scholars argued that objects and things, the materials used to construct them, and the properties of these materials are central to understanding culture and social relations. Humans play as much of a role in the creation of objects as objects create the conditions of human life. So let me repeat this statement. Rather than viewing quote, things, unquote, as reflections or products of society, material culture studies scholars argued that objects and things, the materials used to construct them, and the properties of things, materials, or properties of these materials are central to understanding culture and social relations. Humans play as much of a role in the creation of objects as objects create the conditions of human life. With the recognition of the mutually constitutive role of people and things, the focus then becomes a question of how particular object or rather particular object or things come to have value. Let me repeat. With the recognition of the mutually constitutive role of people and things, the focus then comes to have the focus then becomes a question of how a particular object or thing comes to have value. Arjun Appadurai's edited book, which was published in 1986, The Social Life of Things, Commodities in Cultural Perspective, is widely recognized as setting the stage for a new conversation in the social sciences, not only about things, but also how we think about things. Arjun Appadurai's edited book, which was published in 1986, The Social Life of Things, Commodities in Cultural Perspective, is widely recognized as setting the stage for a new conversation in the social sciences, not only about things, but also how we think about things. In this in his introduction, Appadurai made the case that just like persons, objects and commodities have lives which are implicated in different regimes of value, which result in different meanings as they move through different hands, contexts, and uses. This is a brilliant observation. Appadurai made the case that just like persons, objects and commodities have lives which are implicated in different regimes of value, which result in different meanings as they move through different hands, contexts, and uses. In particular, Kopitoff's um, uh, book, the Kopitoff's contribution to the edited volume introduced a new framework and methodology, cultural biography, as an approach to understanding these changing meanings and regimes of value. In Kopitoff's words, in doing the biography of a thing, one would ask questions similar to those one asks about people. Where does the thing come from? And who made it? What has been its career so far? And what do people consider to be an ideal career for such things? What are the recognized ages or periods in the thing's life? And what are the cultural markers for them? How does the things use change with its age? And what happens to it when it reaches the end of its usefulness? Arjuna Padurai's book, The Social Life of the Things, set the stage for the discussion about the things as we ask questions about persons. So things also have lives. So, and we can also ask the questions, because the way we look at things, the way we think about things, altogether brought a new paradigm by the Arjuna Pedarattaiah in his book. So, and also Kopi Tuff's assertion saying that cultural biography of a thing can be done. So in Kopi Tuff's words, in doing the biography of a thing, one would ask questions similar to those one asks about people. Where does the thing come from, and who made it? What has been its career so far? And what do people consider to be an ideal career for such things? What are the recognized ages or periods in the thing's life? And what are the cultural markers for them? How does the thing's use change with its age? And what happens to it when it reaches the end of its usefulness? In effect, Kopitov approached things as always in um, processing of becoming. In effect, Kopitov's approached things as always in a processing of becoming, of things in motion, rather than a set state of being, with identification as a commodity, commoditization, to be sold, exchanged, or branded as being only one possible stage in the life cycle of a thing. Subsequent studies have explored how these processes may be changing for particular kinds of regimes of value, such as art markets. Myers, Geismer, and the global flows of people, ideas, money, technology, and media. Appadurai, Marcus, and Myers. How has the concept of things been developed in existing research with media? That's the question that we are going to read, important observations. So one of the seminal contributions to debates about the relationship with media technologies as things was the domestication approach, consolidated in the edited volume, Consuming Technologies, Media and Information in Domestic Spaces. Silverstone and Hers are the editors of this book, published in 1992. The volume introduced a productive conversation. This volume introduced a productive conversation between cultural and media studies, concerns with the text and the narrative. The social anthropologists focus on social relationships and material culture studies, attention to the relationship with the things in context, prompting a spate of interdisciplinary conversations around consumption studies. As Silverstones and Hitch describe, contemporary media technologies must be viewed as essentially material objects, capable of great symbolic significance, investment, and meaning, while domestic technologies are embedded in the structures and dynamics of contemporary consumer culture. A participatory, sorry, a particularly important concept within uh, the domestication approach. A particularly important concept within the domestication approach is double articulation, which acknowledges that media technologies are objects that link the private sphere with the public sphere, and in turn facilitate the negotiation of meaning both within and through their use in domestic settings. Silverstone et al. They further argue that objects and meanings in their objectification and incorporation within the spaces and practices of domestic life Define a particular semantic universe for the household in relation to that offered in the public world of commodities and ephemeral and instrumental relationships. Let me repeat this observation. They further argue that objects and meanings in their objectification and incorporation within the spaces and practices of domestic life define a particular semantic universe for the household in relation to that offered in the public world of commodities and ephemeral and instrumental relationships. This has implications for the processes through which new media technologies are incorporated into everyday life. This has implications for the processes through which new media technologies are incorporated into everyday life. Through appropriation, or the process by which people assign meanings to things, people, places, and activities, media technologies are incorporated and redefined in different terms in accordance with the household's own values and interests. The meanings and significance of all media depends upon the varied ways that individuals, households, and other entities use and engage with media technologies. We are discussing how the concept of things being developed in existing research with media. So in that process, we read about Silverstone and Hitch's edited book. In that book, they outlined 4 phases to describe the concept of a domestication. They have developed the domestication approach. So they prescribed 4 phases of the domestication approach to understand the influence of the media technologies in the domestic life. So the first one is appropriation. Second phase is objectification. Third phase is incorporation, and the final phase is conversion. So what is appropriation? According to them, appropriation is when a technology leaves the world of a commodity and can be taken by an individual or a household and owned. It includes the whole process of consumption as well as the moment at which an object crosses the threshold between the formal and the moral economy. The second phase is objectification. It is expressed in usage, but also following Bourdieu. The dispositions of objects in the spatial environment of the home. All media technologies have the potential to be appropriated into an aesthetic environment. So whereas incorporation, the third phase, it focuses on ways in which objects, especially technologies, are used. Technologies are functional. They may be bought with particular features in mind, but may also serve other cultural purposes in appropriation. Indeed, they often become functional in ways that are somewhat removed from the intentions of designers or marketers. Conversion, the final phase of this domestic approach, is the process. Conversion is the process through which, in practice, the relationship between the household and the outside world becomes articulated. Technologies that are present in the household help to define and claim the household and its members in the wider society. Oh, this is very interesting phase. You see, conversion is the process through which, in practice, the relationship between the household and the outside world becomes articulated. Technologies that are present in the household help to define and claim the household and its members in the wider society. This is often related to the ways in which technologies are evaluated within the moral economy of the household and the values of the wider society. The moral economy means the relationship between the things and their morals, their values, their how morals as a lens influence the things and the domestic life and the devices they use and the tools and the relationship they have. All these things come under the moral economy domain. So, um, yeah, this is often related to the ways in which technologies are evaluated within the moral economy of the household and the values of the wider society. As a Silverstone and morally suggest, media technologies must be viewed as capable of great symbolic significance, investment and meaning that become embedded in the structures and dynamics of contemporary consumer culture. See also postal. Like many early studies of information and communication technologies in everyday life, Ellen Lally used domestication theory to examine the introduction of the home computer. Ellen Lally used domestication theory to examine the introduction of the home computer and the processes underpinning the appropriation and ownership of computers and other related assemblages in the home. She draws attention to the ways in which these objects play a role in the constitution or a project of itself, a core characteristic of personhood in many Western contexts. Lally argues that computers and other objects become extensions of the self through acts such as personalization, self-transformation, and material projections of an imagined possible self. This is very interesting observation. You see, Lally argues that computers and other objects become extensions of the self through acts such as personalization, self-transformation, and material projections of an imagined possible self. Lally critiques domestication theory's distinction or a dichotomy between the self and the environment, instead revealing how computers and other related objects become de-alienated in everyday life, noting that their role in the transformations of the self-represent, um, noting that Lally critiques domestication theory's distinction or dichotomy between the self and the environment, instead revealing how computers and other related objects become de-alienated in everyday life, noting that their role in the transformations of the self represent essentially a process by which the ontological security of parts of the self which might previously have been in question stabilize, and we come to feel at home through the accumulation of experience and knowledge in inhabiting them. What Hosen Miller describes as normativity. The short life cycle of different media objects and broader policies of planned uh, obsolescence by companies such as Apple, lead to questions about the pace and processes of the cycle of domestication, horse and George. Moreover, contemporary work on the portability of devices such as the mobile phone, tablets, laptops, as well as profile pages, avatars, apps, and other platforms also challenge domestication theory's focus on the household, especially the living room or long. So as the primary location for negotiating relationships, morals, and values around media and technologies. Theories of the processes of appropriation, domestication, double articulation, and the different values and materialization of things were developed through ethnographic approaches to analog media. More recently, a growing corpus of ethnographic research has developed with the focus upon understanding the diversity of uses and appropriations of digital media in everyday life in different cultural contexts, often focused on specific technologies. For example, what are the implications of the digital for things? So now we discuss what are the implications of the digital for things. For example, Daniel Miller, Don Slater's publication in 2000, The Internet, an Ethnographic Approach, was a seminal study that highlighted local meaning and interpretations of what they termed the Trinidadian Internet. Let me repeat. The Internet and Ethnographic Approach was a seminal study that highlighted the local meaning and interpretations of what they term the Trinidadian Internet. Subsequent ethnographic research has explored the emergence and use of digital media technologies such as mobile phones, video recorders, the webcam, video games, virtual worlds, social network sites, and different engagements with particular communities, networks, and relationships with the internet. So there are different scholars who published different books, highlighted these aspects of this digital um, uh, digital context of things. Through these engagements, scholars have critiqued, modified, and developed new theories to understand digital media as objects and structures and the relationships between the objects and their use. So, what are the implications of the digital for things? Through these engagements, different aspects of digital for things are discussed in the previous different scholars, a bunch of scholars. So through their engagements, these scholars have critiqued, modified, and developed new theories to understand digital media as objects and structures and the relationships between the objects and their use. So the combination of more extensive ethnographic analysis, the increase in access to a number of different digital media technologies, and the ways in which people integrate them into their everyday routines and practices has troubled the virtues of studying individual platforms or technologies such as the mobile phone. Concepts such as mobile media and social media signal the convergence of mobile phones as well as the capabilities or affordances of particular devices via applications, software, and open platforms. Boyd, Gauguin, George, and Jenkins. Analytical frameworks such as media ecologies. Analytical frameworks such as media ecologies by Horst et al. And communicative ecologies by Heron and Marcus, Lenny and Tachi, Slater and Polymedia, and Mediano and Miller also highlighted a renewed attention to context and practice. For example, research on new forms of creative production, such as video, networked gaming, photography, and other forms of expression are increasingly analyzed in relation to genera of participation, scenarios of use, as well as ecologies and repertoires. Baptiste et al. And Kendall et al. And Muir. More specifically, digital media technologies have become spaces. More specifically, digital media technologies have become spaces that move in, through, and between. From Boylestorff's work on Second Life and analysis of youth friendship, work on clans and avatars in World Warcraft. Sorry, I'm sorry. Excuse. Let me repeat this sentence. More specifically, digital media technologies have become spaces that we move in, through, and between. This is a powerful statement. More specifically, digital media technologies have become spaces that we move in, spaces that we move through, and spaces we move between. This is powerful. And from Boylestorff's work on Second Life and analysis of youth friendships, Boyd, Ito et al., to Nardi's work on clans and avatars in World of Warcraft, and Miller's work in 2011 and 12, analysis of social network sites like Facebook. Contemporary research continues to highlight the everyday integration of digital media technologies in everyday life as objects, places, and spaces that we use not only to communicate through, but also to dwell. Avatars, profile pages, and the land pages and virtual homes we customize becomes the ways through which they discover who they are, and what it means to be connected to and in relations with others, the consequences of the digital form for our understanding of the body and other forms of materiality. Avatars, profile pages, and the landing pages and virtual homes we customize become ways through which we discover who we are, what it means to be connected to and in relationship with others, and the consequences of the digital form for our understanding of the body and other forms of materiality. Boylestorff et al., and Ginsberg and Horst and Humphrey and Miller and Sinanan. In order to researching things through digital ethnography. Finally, we are coming to discuss the literature on researching things through digital ethnography. In order to understand the implications of researching media technologies as things that are produced might mean in the context of conducting a digital ethnography, this section turns to three examples of digital media technologies in domestic spaces, as well as in the digital objects that accompany many of us in our everyday life. Each example demonstrates how the researchers designed their ethnographic research on the understanding of people's relationships with different digital media technologies, as well as the key literatures that help to define the relationship to things across each project. The project number one, the example number one, they have given three examples in three different contexts how these digital media technologies and their influences and how it is embedded in human life. So they have taken three case studies. So three projects as examples. The first one, researching radio and textured soundscapes in domestic spaces through ethnographic immersion. The things that make up the material culture of domestic spaces have different temporalities and forms. For example, generally enduring objects such as furniture and technologies have different properties to generally less enduring things such as food, clothing, cut flowers, drapes, and ornaments. In the mid to late 90s, Tachi's research participants also told her nostalgic stories about the recently past golden age of radio and the soundscapes of their childhood. For both sets of participants, almost 20 years apart, remembering the radio meant remembering their childhoods, their youth, and their parents, while the technologies of radio transmission have undergone some dramatic changes, and we have largely moved from analog to digital. And we have largely moved from analog to digital. The uses and roles of mediated audio in domestic spaces remain strikingly consistent. Contemporary mediated audio, contemporary mediated audio, including analog and digital radio, streaming, MP3s, and podcasts, continues to display some of the same affordances that radio sound brought to domestic life 20 years ago. Even while the social perception even while the social perception of what counts as radio has shifted, ethnography helped demonstrate that what is understood as radio has varied across time and location, and how its affordances and constraints have shifted and yet in some ways remained consistent. Example 2. Excuse. Using digital video reenactment to understand how people live with technologies. Using digital video reenactments to understand how people live with technologies. In the context of research about digital media and energy consumption in England, Sara Pink and her colleagues focused on how digital media are used to make the home and how media move around the home with people as part of their everyday life routines. For example, media can be thought of as traveling with people at home in two ways. The technologies they take with them as they move around their homes, and the technologies that stay fixed in one location for long periods of time, but are used as people move through rooms. So, this is interesting. Pink and Leder Mackley used two key methods to research how people use digital media in their homes. The video tour, in which they went from room to room exploring with participants how they use digital media to create the sensory aesthetic of each room, and the reenactment, whereby participants were video recorded, reenacting and showing how they performed their everyday routines. As part of this research, Pink and her colleagues were interested in learning about how people used digital media at key transitional moments in their days. Let me repeat. As part of this research, Pink and her colleagues were interested in learning about how people used digital media at a key transitional moments in their days. One of the everyday activities they focused on with the 20 households who participated in their research was what became referred to as the morning routine, quote unquote, the morning routine. During the research in participants' homes, Sara Pink, Kristen Leder, Mackley, and Roxana Morasanu asked members of each household to show them what they did from the moment they woke up in the morning on an ordinary working day. So in the under the concept of routine, morning routine, during their research in participants' homes, Sara Pink and her colleagues asked members of each household to show them what they did from the moment they woke up in the morning on an ordinary working day to the moment they left home to go to work. To explore these activities with the participants, they used the reenactment method, which Pink has developed across a series of research projects and is discussed in detail elsewhere. Understanding the digital media technologies as things, that is, as material objects, and tracing their movement with people, therefore means that we can begin to see how digital technologies are entangled in the everyday activities of home. When people carry technologies with them, they are also carrying with them their potentials, qualities, and affordances. This is interesting statement. Let me read it again. When people carry technologies with them, they are also carrying with them their potentials, their qualities, and their affordances. Likewise, when people move between technologies, as they traverse their homes, they are moving between these affordances and the experiences and meanings associated with them. The third example, understanding transnational movement through objects of mobility. So the authors have presented three examples to make us understand about the how to investigate or undertake digital ethnographic efforts on things as a concept, um, uh, to focus on, so that how these digital media technologies as things can be understood by these third example. Let us see. The third example, the understanding a transnational movement through objects of mobility. The mobile phone has become a seminal object for maintaining social networks and relationships, facilitating the flow of goods, people and money and managing households and money across national borders. Tijort, Host and Miller, Ling and Host, Wallis. These are the yeah. Between 2010 and 2012, Heather Host and Erin Tyler uh, carried out research that explored mobility on the border of Haiti and the Dominican Republic in the towns of Annecy Pitres and Pedernales. Throughout this project, they examined the materiality of the border in terms of the objects that people carry or use, how these individuals, how these individual objects relate to other objects in a set, and the repertoires of practices and meanings that emerge from their collective use in economic and social arbitrage across the border. Situated within a border, study of life, situated within a border, study of life in the region, a Host and Tyler and Host. Their aim was to understand the mundane ways in which people strategized mobility in light of the different currencies, citizenship status, languages, communication technologies, telecommunications, um, infrastructures, economic opportunities, and power relations that distinctly shape the ways in which mobility and movement are possible. In this significant study, situated within a broader border study of life in the region, Horst and Tyler, their aim was to understand the mundane ways in which people uh, strategized mobility in light of the different currencies, different citizenship status, different languages, different telecommunications, different infrastructures, different economic opportunities, and different power relations that distinctly shape the ways in which mobility and movement are possible. To gain a deeper understanding of mobility on the border and the significance of the mobile phone as an object of mobility, this Horst and Tyler, their research team, including Hermes Beach, Oislin Espinal, and Felix Quiros, and Rodriguez, conducted interviews with 40 individuals living in the border region. They also carried out a survey with 200 respondents, primarily with the people who worked in and around the market that spans the border. With a subset of 12 individuals, they drew on work in design and anthropology to develop a portable kit study focused on the items that border residents carry with them as they live, work, socialize in and around the border region. Ito et al. Participants in the study noted that they carried their most valued objects, viewing home as a less stable or secure, location for the things that they felt were important. Throughout the 12 portable kit studies, the mobile phone was always in the top of 5 objects that Haitian migrants in the region carried with them on a daily basis. Understanding the mobile phone as a thing or object of mobility that can accompany mobile persons highlights the multiple ways in which mobile phones come to have meaning and value. In this example, the mobile phone is a repository for family members, employers, spouses, and friends. It is a conduit for communication where relationships can be intensified and enlivened. through conversations and calls. In many ways, it is a domestic place. In many ways, it is a domestic place. The place of places where family, in Haitian sense of loku, are a cluster of homes that includes extended families who share resources, parenting, care, religious practices, which emerged in rural Haiti during plantation slavery, comes together. Edmond et al. In this context, the mobile phones becomes a seminal to keeping the family together, given the distance that separate members of Haitian families who migrate. It is an object that is both a thing that represent and a reface differences between two national contexts. Let me repeat this statement. It is an object. In this context, the mobile phones becomes seminal to keeping the family together, given the distance that separates members of Haitian families who migrate. It is an object that is both a thing that represents and a reface differences between two national contexts, as well as an object that can transgress the boundaries between the two countries. It is also a thing that sits alongside a range of other objects: money, keys, identity cards, and wallets, required for everyday movement for migrants. Importantly, the importantly, the mobile phone's significance in this set of objects of mobility remains relational rather than fixed, part of a repertoire of practices that are contingent on the context in which a person or a thing circulates. Reflecting on the things as a category, reflecting on the things as a category for digital ethnography research. The three examples in this chapter describe different approaches to the study of different digital media technologies as things. These three examples, which were discussed just before, so they describe different approaches to the study of these three different examples, describes different approaches to the study of digital media technologies as things. Collectively, they build upon the work of media and cultural studies scholars in their emphasis on understanding the meaning of media technologies in particular cultural contexts. They also extend the work in social anthropology, material culture studies, and media studies on domestication and the social life of things through their focus upon routines, different states, and affordances of things, and the relationships between people and things in motion. Yet, the examples also illustrate new avenues of exploration, especially around the ways in which we understand the domestic context and the salience of concepts such as domestication for capturing the material properties of things. Pink and her colleagues emphasized the ways in which people develop relationships with media technologies as part of their everyday routines, getting ready for the work and school, coming home at the end of the day, and getting ready for bed, rather than the stable and enduring environment facilitated in classic studies of domestication. These practices are enacted daily and become part of the daily work of living with a range of different digital media technologies. Post and Tyler's study of portable kits on the border of Haiti and the Dominican Republic also attends the media technologies, especially the mobile phone, carried with them as they go about their daily lives, but situates the mobile phone within the range of objects of mobility, such as ID cards, wallets, keys, and money, that are equally, if not more, important to Haitian migrants as they navigate significant physical, material, and structural differences. We are reflecting on things as the category for digital ethnography research. So, while in many ways, Tachi's study of radio and textures of home could be viewed as a classic example of the domestication approach, her focus is less on hard materiality of media technologies and turns instead to the immaterial properties of sound and permeate the space of the homes. This in turn spurs a consideration of the ways in which media are variously used to secure affective equilibrium and senses of being connected to a world outside the home. In all these cases, the ways in which people relate to and engage with the ways in which people related to and engage with the digital media technologies is revealed to be in motion, mutable, and even transient. This is important. The three examples in this chapter also reveal how we might conceptualize digital ethnography as a research approach and framework. Summary. Authors of this book, this is Digital Ethnography, Principles and Practice, which is a textbook for our digital ethnography course. So these authors outline the history and development of the concept of researching digital media technologies as things that have social lives, circulate in our culture, and are embedded in the processes of change over time. They argued that in a digital context, the notion of the digital media technologies as things provide an important vantage point for ethnographic research and analysis. They highlighted how things have material properties that correspond with the move beyond their physical presence in everyday life. Let me repeat the statement. They highlighted how the things have material properties that correspond with and move beyond their physical presence in everyday life. This requires a rethinking of the ways in which devices and environments are intertwined through everyday practices in particular places or contexts, the ways in which environments are designed by a range of stakeholders, and the salience of things in our everyday lives. Exploring the different ways in which we now research things also reveals a shift in academic debates and directions. In particular, while the past 20 years of research has been dominated by a concern with understanding the multiple meanings and processes of consumption, the heart of the contemporary ethnographic research has, in many ways, returned to the processes of production and design that have effectively been mystified through the global networks of production, distribution, and consumption, as well as the immaterial nature of digital technologies. This also means an engagement with designers and others who work in industry, who are interested in understanding consumers' desires and aspirations to design usable platforms, software, programs, and objects. For hosts, this has also meant a more focused engagement with the mobile technologies companies. Sorry. For host, this has also meant for a focused engagement with the mobile telecommunications companies that market and brand technologies, their negotiations with regulators, as well as the less visible aspects of digital media technologies, such as mobile signals. Host 2013. The new affordable, sorry, the new affordances of digital media technologies, their temporality, interactivity, replicability, persistence or storage, searchability, mobility, scalability, Barum, have spurred the ethnographers on to experiment with alternative frameworks such as infrastructure. Let me repeat this wonderful, comprehensive statement. The new affordances of media, the new affordances of digital media technologies, their temporality, interactivity, replicability, persistence or storage, searchability, mobility, scalability have spurred ethnographers on to experiment with alternative frameworks such as infrastructure by Bell and Dorish, Star, actor network theory, design and other approaches to understand our relationship with the digital media technologies as things, as their chapter, as this chapter demonstrates. The strength of the digital ethnography approach revolves around its adaptable set of frameworks to understand our dynamic digital worlds. The new affordances of digital media technologies, their temporality, interactivity, replicability, persistence, for storage, searchability, mobility, and scalability have spurred ethnographers on to experiment with alternative frameworks such as infrastructure, actor network theory, design, and other approaches to understand our relationship with the digital media technologies as things. This demonstrates the strength of the digital ethnography approach resolved around its adaptable set of frameworks to understand our dynamic digital worlds. So, dear friends and participants, yeah, my presentation is over. This whole content is taken from our textbook. So yeah, this is very important. All these 7 concepts, researching experiences, researching practices, researching things, and so a few more to go. So on each, we will have one session, and by listening to this video recording frequently or reading this textbook, trying to understand and discuss, and we can really understand. They're also at the end of the chapter, they are giving 3 examples of studies how they undertook the digital ethnography through these prescribed concepts. So they're giving us a literature review of the concept, and also the implication of the concept for the digital ethnography, and also uh, the any related different approaches that we can look for to synchronize those approaches. The others are encouraging us to use related approaches and to investigate the digital worlds of the participants so that they can have so that we can have a meaningful and productive digital ethnographic endeavor as we are aspiring to undertake digital ethnography. After this course is over, we are going to undertake a design, a research problem, and tools, data collecting tools, and required methods. I'm also going to take some detailed ethnographic related sessions so that we will be thoroughly equipped for the intended work in our own interest. So the participants are given a freedom to choose your research problem, and we are going to apply the digital research, digital ethnographic methods, so that we can undertake and finish our ethnographic efforts, and after that we can come back and write, analyze, interpret, and publish. So this is the process that we are undergoing step by step. So there are other important books. I'm going to very fast. Future sessions will be very crispy, and so that because many things to go, we have limited time. So if possible, I will take 2 sessions a week to cover the syllabus, to give a comprehensive picture how these noted scholars for 2 decades and more than that, how they're engaged and what are their experiences, what are their methods, tools, concepts, and principles, and the examples and cases they have to offer to us, so that we can have a broader understanding and deeper grasp of the digital ethnography. What is digital ethnography? How to do it? That are the 2 questions. Um, what to do and how to do. How to do is a skill. So this International Institute of Anthropological Applications, its main focus is to offer the training courses to um, acquire the required skills as anthropologists and ethnographers. What are um, the recent trends, recent theories, or recent methods and experiences and stories of importance for us to shine in social sciences and make the positive difference on the communities. Finally, this institute will lead our students, scholars, and faculties to get equipped for making the positive difference through applying the anthropological knowledge and methods and concepts and theories to practical life situations, real problems of the real people that are living in the contemporary times. In this pandemic time, COVID pandemic time, how we are going to engage in ethnographic research work. What is the role of digital ethnography? How to upgrade our skills, how to acquire the required digital ethnographic skills. So that is the focus of this course. For the instructors also, it is new, brand new, and we are co-learners together. So I submit myself humbly and frankly. I'm no greater to anybody. Just I have the enthusiasm to take initiative and to press forward and to the deeper layers of the wisdom of the scholars over the centuries, as anthropology scholars and and other disciplines, related disciplines like I'm also aspiring to cover the social psychology theories. There are more than 50 theories, social psychology theories. Those that comes under psychological anthropology in one way. That's why we need to get familiar with those things, because we are going to people, we are going to digital spaces. We are going to map their minds, their worldviews, their different cognitive and evaluative and um, uh, systems that are in place, which are the components of the worldview. So yes, um, what we are trying to do, we want to understand the ground reality, do's and don'ts, and how to's, and what to know and how to know, and where to know, and what are the books that we need to read. All those things we are trying to step by step. The process is evolving, and thank you for understanding and cooperating. And I hope this journey will give us a productive and meaningful outcome. Yeah, with these few words, I will stop here. Uh, my dear participants of this course, Digital Ethnography, and yeah, I encourage you to read books that are prescribed in our course outline. Um, so, and to listen to these video recordings. Um, and I will also, I'm trying to write a letter to Professor Sara Pink to address our group, and so that we will have a first-hand experience. We're listening to Professor Sara Pink. She's in Australia, so, and trying to connect with Christine Hein, the author of Virtual Ethnography. And also, if possible, I will also connect with Daniel Miller. Um, so, the author of Digital Anthropology. So we have nice books in place already. We need to be vigilant and diligent, and we should be hardworking, so that if we have a limited time. And yeah, while we pursue our digital ethnography, also we can read and learn and listen to YouTubes by the famous scholars. And last night I have posted in our group about Padurai's materiality, and that related these things. So in that he discusses about things, because that's why I posted it. So please try to watch that video completely, and whatever the videos I post, try to watch it completely, because of importance only, because of the relevance to the course only. I will post in our group, Dipang. So yeah, so I'm excited to looking forward. Have a beautiful, productive, meaningful sessions, so that our thinking horizons and grasping levels will be enhanced and widened, and so that we will do excellent digital ethnography. And we are conducting a National Applied Anthropology Congress in the second week of December this year, 2021. So this sending the abstract, we received 5 abstracts. Some people have promised to send, but that's why we extended the date till the end of this month. So try to write and publish. So present your papers in this anthropological application in the contemporary times. What are the skills and thoughts that you have? In what way anthropology can be of great value and useful for making the difference in this tough pandemic time, trying times. So in what way you want to project your knowledge and publish. This is a good platform. You are encouraged to write a paper and also think about your research problem for the digital ethnography. So do you have any questions or queries? So I'm looking forward to have 2 sessions each week. Some of our friends told because they have teaching assignments, they could not participate in the sessions, but they will be listening to the sessions. So that is encouraging. So we are doing a course on digital ethnography. So participating in the webinars, these training sessions, is one way digitally, and at the same time listening to the video recordings also makes a difference. So finally what we want to learn, and that is matters, and we need to learn. So yes, it's time for you to speak. Hello dear ones. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to end this meeting. See you soon in the coming session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Dr. Laho Mary, please, you want to speak something?
No, sir.
Oh, you are saying yes. Okay, okay. Okay, have a nice time. Have a good time. Right, bye. See you soon.
See you, sir.
Bye. Thank you.